Welcome to Fall, Rise, Give, where we explore life's ups and downs through the lens of a mainstream drunk's design for living. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of life, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the power of giving back. Whether you're sober curious, in recovery, or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your go-to for real talk, raw emotion, and a whole lot of heart. Tune in and discover how to fall, rise, and give back in life's extraordinary journey. I feel like we need a drum roll or something. Number 6 is where we are. It's the Fall, Rise, Give podcast. I'm Bartender Bob. That's Kumar. We're having fun with this podcast. So last week, Kumar, we talked a little bit about, going with the moment. And that was one of the big things. That was one of the big takeaways for last podcast for me. And I actually put that into place this week. One of my best friend's dads passed away a couple of weeks ago, and the funeral was this last week. And we went to the funeral. Monique and I went to the funeral. And after the funeral, I was kind of contemplating if I wanted to go to the lunch or not. You know, they have a lunch after a funeral. Yeah. We decided to go. It was one of the things that we weren't really planning on doing, but we did, and I'm glad we did. So it was kind of taking the podcast that we talked about last week and using that as part of our life and part of our, our journey for that day, for the funeral day.
Yeah, it's following your bliss or your intuition and whatever the spirit is guiding you towards, right? So we talked about energies, and we talked about how intuition is connected to our bodies, and once we get more and more in tune with our bodies, we get to follow the real beat of our heart, per se. And as we listen to the intuition, I actually did that same thing myself. I followed my heart towards some financial investments, and I just felt really called towards doing it. And it ended up, first couple of days was rocky. I was doubting myself. And then all of a sudden, the market turned or whatever happened, and the financial investments, one of them actually just blew doors and announced earnings, one of the companies that I invested in, and was up like 15% for the week.
Are you a kind of investor that invests for the long haul? Are you like in and out of the market?
That's a great question. So about 85-90% of my investments are long haul. I invest, I know tech. I'm a techie per se, and so I invest in the long term. But I have this hobby / investment around stock options, and so I tend to do a lot of analysis around what's called technical analysis with the charts and things like that. And then I pick from 20 companies down to 6 or so, and then of those 6 companies that I qualify, I still got to only pick 3 or 4. So I try to follow my intuition and say, what's my gut telling me about these companies? So this last week, I picked 3 companies, and then they all did well this week. But I try to stay in there for about, 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 6 weeks at a time in those 3 companies. I kind of rotate. It's kind of a hobby of mine. I love investments. I love the stock market. I love stock options. And so that's kind of something that I follow my intuition on. It's not necessarily easy to talk about, but I do my homework, make sure these companies are solid. But even within those companies, you got to make up a decision. You can't invest in everything.
Funny is that's another thing that you and I have in common that we didn't know about before. Because I love investing, and my dad worked for the Burlington Northern Railroad when I was growing up. Then he became a financial planner after we graduated. So in '87, he became a financial planner, and so we were, he's kind of talked about us our whole lives. He always said that those that understand interest are the ones that make it, and those that don't understand it are the ones that pay it. And so that's kind of always been in my head when dealing with life and growing up and having my kids grow up and stuff. I kind of talk to them about that. But I started investing at a young age, and actually I've been pretty lucky with that. I actually paid for my cabin. I bought Yahoo back in the day, and it ended up going from here to, splitting multiple times. I actually bought Tesla. I bought 4 shares of Tesla many years ago. I own 60 shares of Tesla now because of just the way that things have split and and come together. And so I'm kind of happy about some of that stuff,
That's awesome. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think Tesla is one of those big investments that it took off. Yahoo did in the early days as well. Obviously, I'm in Seattle, so Microsoft and Amazon are big deals. I had the opportunity to work at Amazon or do my own startup, and I went my startup route, which ended up being okay. But yeah, Amazon's one of those big things here. We have investments into Microsoft right now in a couple of long-term ways, and I have a short-term investment in Microsoft as well. But yeah, big companies I think are safer than small companies, and I think it's a great way to have, I don't want to say passive income, but it's a good way to have income once you have some money. Let the money work for you rather than you working all the time and just trying to, go day to day living. Try to whatever savings you have, investing in the market or in real estate or whatever that suits your fancy. I think investment is a really important part of life.
It's fun. Okay, so it's funny that we're talking about investments now because that's not what the show is about. But I'm going to roll it into what it is, what the show is about. It's about fall, rise, and give, and it's about grounding, and it's about things like that. I've actually got into some stocks. Unfortunately, when I first started bartending 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it's right when the marijuana stocks were legal and you could buy them. And there was a company up in Canada that everybody was investing in. I invested a ton of money in one company. I watched it go like this, and this, and then I bought it here. And
Yeah.
from here it went all the way down. My $2,000 investment is worth less than $20 right now. And I talked to some financial guys about it, and they said, hold on to that for when you make a ton off one thing, you can turn around and sell that, and then that way you can offset it. So that kind of is the grounder of life right there, if you think about it.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so, when we talk about fall, rise, and give, we're going to fall. Our investments are going to fall. And we just got to catch ourselves where we are today, look at failures and lessons and things like that. And so for me, what was interesting is when I had stock failures, I guess we're talking about stock for the time being. We'll just go with the flow. I had stock failures in a couple of companies, and I learned my lesson. And then I had some big wins, and then I made sure I cashed out of those big wins instead of just letting it ride fully.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of those went down again. So the ups and downs of life. And then when I got the big investments in my stock company the company that I co-founded and I sold it, I made sure I protected ourselves by doing something called hedging strategies. Mark Cuban did the same thing with Yahoo. He sold broadcast.com to
Mm-hmm.
Yahoo for, I think, $2 billion. And he hedged his shares. He spent $22 million putting insurance on his stock and cashed out over a couple of $1 billion. Same thing I did with mine, and I was able to cash out a bunch of money myself. And so, yeah, you learn from each lesson in the market or in life, and then you apply it, and that's how you rise higher and higher, right? Every time you're going to fall, you're going to keep having failures, small or big or whatever, and you got to keep rising. And then as you rise through them, you learn those lessons, and then hopefully you get into a place you realize, hey, as I'm going up in life, I want to be able to give back to my communities, even though if it's giving $10 to a homeless guy in the street, to giving to charity a few $1,000s here and there, and or giving your time. Giving is really important. I'm doing both. I'm able to give my time to people. I spent some time mentoring a couple of guys this week, and then I was also able to give a few dollars to here and there to charities as well.
It's funny that you'd mentioned time and money because I'm a big believer that time is more valuable than money because time is finite. You only have so many breaths in this world. Money, you can always make more, but you can't always make more breaths. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. That's why it's so important to live a authentic life, right? And what is an authentic life? Authentic life is really living in congruence with your true self. And how do you really know your true self? And so um, I think all we have is today. Yesterday was yesterday's news. Tomorrow is going to be written by what we do today. And so I think one of the most important things is to understand yourself. And one of the ways that I've been able to do that is through the principles behind human nature, through understanding my traditional philosophies around the Hindu chakra system And so there are 7 chakra systems that connect us through our body. And they're not only applying it to our body, they're applying us to our society. Even money is one of the big ones. And so, what I like to do next, Bob, if it's okay with you, is to talk through these 7 chakras, the principles behind these, and how our energy gets stuck. And then the key point there is to understand our true self. Money is actually a big part of one of the chakras. And so we'll talk about that as well. So I think let's talk through those, unless you got any comments or any questions before we get started on those.
No, let's move forward on there. There's 7 of them, right?
Yeah, there's
I
7
think
chakras.
did we hit on a couple of them last time?
Yeah, we did. We talked about intuition, which is the 6th chakra. You're really getting in touch with our intuition, which is what we talked about, following our gut feeling. And then our heart chakra, which is our energy center, as we mentioned last time. The heart chakra controls our upward movement through the body and through the ether towards our spirit, which is the 7th crown chakra, and also down towards the energy of living in the human nature, which is grounding ourselves to our base. So the heart sits at the center. We talked about we're all energy. We're all electrical energy in a way. In that sense, we check our heart through an EKG machine, through a heart rate, through a pulse. That's an electrical beat, actually. So we are energetic beings. So there are these 7 energy centers in the body. And these 7 energy centers represent certain principles, certain things about life and society and our connection to the world. But really, it's all about your body knowing how you fit in this world. And so the first chakra is the root chakra. It's really around grounding yourself into who you are today. So, what are you about? Where do you fit in the world today? Do you have a job? Do you have a family? Do you have hobbies, interests, things like that? How's your connection? How are you feeding yourself? Where are you living? All of those things around grounding yourself in the present moment and accepting things with humility and having full accountability of you are where you are. And if you're not grounded, we can easily tell somebody's not grounded by their being all over the place. And so the first chakra is all about grounding. We'll spend a little bit more time in that, but let's move up the chain a little bit. The second chakra, so grounding is all around where we are in the world, where we are in our bodies. Second chakra is on our desire, our sacral chakra. That's really around relationships with ourself, one-on-one relationships with, and then desire and creativity. It's also considered the sexual chakra. So when we have desire, there's sometimes that motivates us. People have all sorts of wish for money, for relationships, for sex, for love, for intimacy, connections. All of those things are tied into that chakra. Sometimes we block it. Sometimes we don't understand our bodies enough. So how do you go open that? We'll talk about that maybe next week. The third one is the power chakra. When something goes wrong, something you may lose your job or something will happen, your wife might leave you. That hits you right at the core. That's the fear and the power chakra. You feel it right in the gut. It can really recenter you and not center you at all, kind of throw you off balance completely. So that's the solar chakra, the third one. The fourth one we talked a little bit about is the heart chakra. That's the energy center. It can move energy down or up. That's where love and compassion come in. And to get really open that one up is around forgiveness. The fifth chakra is the communication chakra, which is really our throat chakra. It's how do we communicate? How do we make decisions around what we're going to say? How are we going to connect with others? This is a relationship chakra with everybody, not just yourselves. And so this is how we communicate with the external world. The sixth chakra, which we talked about, intuition and the mind's eye, it's kind of right above your forehead. It's kind of considered your brain chakra as well. It's your intuition, it's your brain function, it's your mind's eye, it's your ability to see things as they truly are. And so that's your sixth chakra, the mind's eye.
Would
The
you call that
seventh chakra,
is that like intuition?
it's intuition right here, right? It's
Okay.
taking your brain, taking your feelings, taking your emotions, and that's where the sixth chakra comes in, the mind's eye. We'll spend a lot of time on that one as well as we did last time. And we talked about money today. That's the abundant chakra, is the seventh chakra, the crown chakra. We all want money, but money is just energy. We take our energy from work, we get some dollars in our bank account, we transfer that over to buy some food. Food gives us energy or home or what have you. And so money is just energy transformed into a physical object, a physical thing in dollars, and or a currency for trading energy, really. And so we buy our food, our shelter, our cars, whatever, with the money that we have. But really, where does it come from? So this abundance attitude, that's the seventh chakra around energy that we get from true insights into the world, manifestation, and the crown chakra, the spirit, our soul. That's the seventh chakra. I can really open up and enter our system. So, any questions there so far?
So my question is this. So people that are listening obviously don't know that we had problems getting this podcast to work today. So we kind of flew by the seat of our pants to make this thing work. What chakra would that fall into? So what would the chakra of being in the moment and making something out of nothing, where would that fall?
Great. It's the topic of today, actually. Groundedness. We had to accept where we were today. We ran into a bunch of technical difficulties for about 20 minutes or so, right? Maybe a little longer. And we had to accept that, hey, our technology today, my laptop, your connection, whatever it was, didn't work. So accepting where you are today, then you can think of possible solutions. Then we go back to, we can move our energy up to the second one, which is desire. What do we want? So accepting where we were, having humility, what we were trying wasn't working for 25, 30 minutes, whatever it was. And we thought about solutions. We wanted to do a podcast today. It was all about grounding ourselves. Maybe I got a little frustrated. Maybe you got a little frustrated, but we found our center. We are often going to lose our center, but the idea is to constantly ground ourselves. Sometimes just pausing. Both of us pause today. The second step, maybe sometimes it's a little bit bigger of a rattling of our cages. We may have to go for a walk. We may have to meditate. But the idea is that we're sitting with ourselves saying, okay, I'm accepting the fact that things are not going the way I want them to. Grounding ourselves, you can go for a walk, you can go for meditation, you can watch your favorite show, whatever it is to get your mind off things. But the big thing is grounding yourself in where you are today. And so that's the root chakra. We have to constantly find where we are. And part of the theme of this book is helping people. You know, we talked about addictions, we talked about the attitude adjustment program that we talk about. People have alcohol that gets in the way. Oftentimes we ground ourselves through drugs, through alcohol, through food, through whatever it is that's easy to get to change our dopamine level. But really, the best thing that we can do for ourselves is just saying, okay, I accept that the feeling or situation in life is not working the way I want. As I sit there, then I go back to saying, okay, I'm going to have humility about this. Things are not what I want them to be. So, what's my next step? What do I want? But I got to really ground myself in saying, things are not working. So, a lot of people in the attitude adjustment program get stuck and saying, what do I do? They have to accept the fact that, hey, their life is not where they want them to be. Maybe they're living a numb life. Maybe they're living a life of addiction and causing problems. Maybe they got a DUI, whatever that is. They realize that alcohol is not working for them in that situation. Mm-hmm. So they need to get grounded in that, accepting that fact and have accountability that they are exactly where they are based on the choices, based on the experiences in their life, based on their beliefs, and based on the actions that they took. But right now, you are where you are, and accepting that fact, that's kind of the key.
It's one of the sayings that we have hanging up on the wall in our front room is a sign that my girlfriend Monique made many years ago before we met. It says every moment matters, and that hangs up on that. It's a board that she made at a shop many years ago, and it hangs up in her front room every day. So every day I look at that and I do think about that, because every moment does matter. It kind of is what we're talking about now, that you take those moments, and if you can prioritize the things that you're thinking about, or prioritize the things in your life and make it actually work for the way you want it. Just like we're talking about with the grounding, with the where there's a problem, there's a solution. There's going to be something that you can do in order to turn that, it's just cliche, turn that frown upside down, make something work out of something that wasn't supposed to work, or it wasn't supposed to be there.
Exactly. So the key is to get grounded, right? All you have is this moment. In that attitude adjustment program, they talk about one day at a time. They talk about all you're doing. There's a great book out there called The Power of Now by a guy named Eckhart Tolle. All the gurus, all the sages, all the monks, all they talk about is being in the moment. What is the task at hand? What are you thinking about? Don't be so hard on yourself. The key is not to be judgmental, not to beat yourself up from what you made yesterday, but right now, sitting with yourself. If it's not meditating, if it's walking out in the woods, walking outside your yard, just for a few minutes, clear your thoughts, saying, okay, exactly where I'm at, get grounded. And that's when the intuition, that's when the desires of what it is that you want out of the situation, you start to think about it. But you're not going to get that when you start pounding beers at a pub. That's not a good way to get grounded. That's just a way to...
Just numbing up the old head when you do that.
That's just numbing up the old hat. So the key is to get grounded. I was watching a show on transformation and desire, and this famous author was on there, and a bunch of elite athletes, and they all talked about certain things, and they had a woman on there, and this guy went on and said there were 1,400 research stories on the success of meditation. We talked about meditation last time and how transcendental meditation calmed the whole city of Washington, D.C., and how the crime dropped. They all went on to say meditation was the key to sitting with yourself to really get silence, and or if it's meditating through the woods or swimming or whatever, you find your peace, and from that peace starts to help you figure out what the next step is. And your next step is right now at the moment. What are you going to do next? So groundedness, then you start moving into desire. What is it that you want in this situation today? What can you control?
We'll talk desire next time and how to open up that sacral. Is that how you pronounce it?
Sacral? Yeah, the sacral chakra. And I just wanted to confirm that, hey, being grounded really means accepting yourself where you are, accepting the fact that no judgment around it. You are here because you are supposed to be here, having accountability for your thoughts, actions, beliefs, and experiences, not having a judgment around it, but having some humility, saying, you know what, maybe it is my fault. Maybe it isn't my fault, whatever that is, but I'm here today. And so now at this particular moment, I got to accept and love myself for where I'm at. And then from there, we figure out the next step on what is it that I want as a next step in my life, or for tomorrow or the next year or whatever.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Fall, Rise, Give, where we explore stories of resilience, growth, and giving back. If you enjoyed today's episode, please check out our website at fallrisegive.com. Also, consider subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform and leaving us a review. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you inspiring stories. Stay tuned for our next episode. And remember, every fall is a chance to rise, and every rise is an opportunity to give. Until next time, keep falling, rising, and giving. This is Fall, Rise, Give, produced by podcastforhire.com. Thank you for listening.